the light shining off of that.
My computer is just in the way for that. Oh, that's great. Next to you, like this. Okay, so this is a half time for you speaking.
Sorry?
Is half time for you speaking?
Half?
Yeah.
About 30% I spend speaking. I'm mostly a consultant and a writer, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sitting here with Shel Holtz. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. You are such an awesome communicator.
Well,
You've
thank
been
you.
working as a communicator or community manager for like 35 years or 40 years? Or
I've been in corporate communications for when I started in 1977, so you do the math.
Yeah.
I was a newspaper reporter before that.
Yeah. You are regretted you quit as a reporter?
Actually, I was fired.
You were fired?
I was working for a weekly community newspaper with an insane publisher who actually found out I was Jewish and fired me. So.
Oh, well, it happens. Maybe that's the best that could happen, is to be fired.
It was, because I ended up, it was funny, I went to my college placement advisor and I said, look, I need a job. And he said, well, I don't have any real jobs for you, but I have a job in this thing called employee communications for an oil company that'll tide you over until something real comes along.
Yeah.
It ended up being my introduction to corporate communications, and I've never left, in addition to the fact that it tripled my salary.
Yeah, I get fired twice, and that's the best that could happen to me. You know,
It works out for the better every time.
Kept me moving.
Yes.
Never mind. Now you have your own company, Shel Communication.
Holtz Communication plus Technology.
Plus the technology, and it's been you're a founder.
I'm the founder and the sole employee.
Okay.
It started in 1996. Helping organizations figure out how to communicate online. The web was fairly new to most organizations in 1996.
So you're an author as well, and you've written a lot of books.
Six
books, but that was the last book came out like 2006 or something, right?
I think it was a little later than that. It was Tactical Transparency. I think it's been about 3 years.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Time for the next one?
I've already got a publisher and a theme, and I'm just refining the proposal so that it better meets the needs of the publisher. And I keep refining the idea in my own mind, but it's I don't have a title for it yet. But it talks about content as a social object. It's sort of around content marketing, which we've been talking about a lot at this conference, but more about the notion that the content you produce needs to be produced with the understanding that it is something that people will share and it is something that people will talk about.
That's interesting because we are talking. We are talking about, Brian Solz is talking about, and Chris Brogan is talking about that, the social graph compared to the interest graph, right?
Right.
And you might wonder what's the difference actually, because our social graph is based on social objects, isn't it?
Well, it's also based on relationships. I mean, in my social graph, there are people that I talk to just because they are friends, and I find them interesting, but we're not necessarily talking about stuff.
Yeah, but you're talking something that interests you, right?
Right, we could be talking about politics or religion.
Yeah,
right?
but that's my point, because if you have a social graph, okay, you are connected to people that makes sense for you,
right,
and you for them, and you're connected, and then there's some conversation between you guys, and all the conversation are based on a social object or some kind of interest, or does it exist a social object that is not an interest? Could you say that?
Well, I think there are interests that aren't necessarily where the conversation isn't initiated by an object. So unless you take the definition of an object to its very lowest level, a joke is a social object.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm trying to think of a good example from recently, but my daughter will just comment on an update. I'll say I just heard this great point in a talk, and my daughter will leave a comment saying that sounds really interesting. Wish I was there. Now, the comment that the speaker made, you could call that a social object, but I'm actually talking about content as social objects, something that a content producer produces, whether it's a white paper or a blog post or a photo or a video or a tweet or whatever, but it's a deliberately produced piece of content that is designed to promote sharing and conversation among a targeted audience of people who are interested in that particular topic.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be of interest to everybody.
Okay. And this piece of content, a piece of the social object will shift, or just change in characters all the way, all the time, or are they the same all the time? You see what I mean?
Oh, I think they can.
Yeah. Because we're talking about not a status quo. We're talking about a timeless flow of information and contents and stuff.
Right. I think it's a continuum. I think it's always ebbing and flowing. What content you're going to use, I think, is based on what you know about your audience and what their preferences are. I think it's based on what the current trends are. I think it's based on understanding, for example, that some people are auditory learners and some people are visual learners, and you may need to create a piece of content in two different formats in order to accommodate those different learning approaches. But as long as it's something that people are going to say, wow, this is cool, or wow, this is interesting, or gee, I know somebody who could really benefit from this, and tell them about it or share it. I'll give you a great example, and this has absolutely nothing to do with business at all, but my daughter, who's 22 years old, she's getting married this year, she knows that my wife and I are big fans of Battlestar Galactica and Doctor Who. In fact, you may notice that I'm wearing a TARDIS on my lapel.
Doctor Who, I know, but not Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who. And she sends me a link. She says, I saw this and thought of you. And it was a video clip of sketch comedy from an independent TV show that was very funny about Battlestar Galactica. Actually incorporated a couple of actual members of the cast and ended with a Doctor Who joke. And I thought it was hysterical, so I called my wife over and I said, you got to watch this. I sat her down on my desk, and she thought it was hysterical. So the next thing I did was I shared it on Google+. And I said, you all got to watch this. And now it's got, how many +1s and how many other people have shared it. That was a social object that inspired first my daughter, then me, and then other people to pass it along and comment about how funny it is. And it's based on the fact that we all understand the inside joke about Battlestar Galactica, about Doctor Who. So what I'm trying to educate in this next book, what I'm trying to educate business communicators about, is that's what you have to do with content. It's not pitching, it's not selling, it's not spinning, it's creating things that talk about maybe the environment your business operates in. Cisco Systems is all about networking, right? So we're going to create content that shows how important networking is and all the amazing things you can do in a networked world that people are going to want to share and talk about. You've got to see this. Right? Because that's what's going to elevate Cisco's brand and get people thinking that Cisco is a trusted source for this kind of information.
Would you say that the brand is a social object as well?
I would not, because the brand, well, I think different people define brand differently. I've always liked Jeff Bezos' definition of brand. He's the CEO and the founder of Amazon.com, and he says your brand is what people say about you after you've left the room. So your brand is the impression that people have of you based on their cumulative experience with your organization. Your brand is not your mark. Now your mark could be a social object, could be one that you don't want people to expound upon. I mean, look at the Susan G. Komen for the Cure Foundation right now. People see that mark, and they probably have some very passionate and negative feelings that 2 weeks ago they wouldn't have had. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with all that. So, your trademark is very closely associated with your brand, because when people see your mark, it's all of the experience that they've had and everything they've heard about you that floods into their minds, and they create this impression, and it's going to be positive, it's going to be neutral, or it's going to be negative.
As a business, would you say that it's a good idea to just inspire others to create this piece of content relevant for your business, or should you produce them by yourself?
I think both. I think you want to be creating this content, but if your biggest fans are out there creating content, there's a line of men's skincare and hair care products called Axe. And their marketing focus is rather prurient, and it's toward early 20s, and it's a very sexually oriented type of a marketing campaign. And so people started creating their own Axe commercials. And they're hysterical, and a lot of organizations would have called their lawyers and said, you have to put a stop to this. They're taking our trademark and they're using it without our permission, and we can't allow this. The folks at Axe said, this is great, we have fans doing our advertising for us. and they encouraged it.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think,
So we have a social graph, we have interest graphs, and we have social objects, and these all fit together.
They all weave together. Yeah.
Would you say that it's possible for a company to have a social graph?
Oh, of course, internally, absolutely. And more organizations are developing internal social media. It's also been referred to as Enterprise Web 2.0, but it's bringing the social channels and the social tools that people are so accustomed to using in their day-to-day lives out on the World Wide Web onto the intranet and into the organization. So employees can blog, and employees can upload their own videos to the company video library, and you can create a profile and find other employees to form groups with, and do status updates like you can on Twitter. There's Yammer and Chatter and all of these tools that emulate Twitter in the organization.
Have you tried the LinkedIn in-maps graph?
I haven't yet. No.
What you do is they visualize your network, and it's nothing to do with the conversation between the network. As you might know, it's only a network. Right? But the interesting part is it depends on how many people that are connected to each other that you have in common will make clusters.
Right.
So you have different kind of clusters that you can by yourself figure out what kind of clusters they are, if they are regarding your business or your different kind of topics or your former business.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So, but the funny thing is that from my point of view, my business, my news desk, there are different kind of stakeholders and customers coming into that cluster because they know so much people in the same environment, right? So when you're talking about the social graph for a company, I would say you may tell me if I'm right and wrong, but a company is not a human beings and it is not socials, but the summary of all people connected, working for or stakeholders that are related to the business. The sum of their social graphs related to the business will be the company's social graph. Or what do you say?
I think there's two ways to look at this. First of all, there's just within the company itself, the employees.
Yes.
I think you could probably map a social graph among the employees. Work is social. Business is not a human being, regardless of what some politicians may say. And the law in the United States, of course, treats them as human beings, but they're not. They don't have, blood vessels, and they're not people. They're legal entities. But the people who work for them are social. Work is a social construct. I heard a CEO tell me once, I asked him, how does information move through your organization? How does knowledge move through your organization? And he said one of the smartest things I've ever heard a CEO say. He said, if you really want to know that, go outside and talk to the smokers. Right? Because they're all out there from different departments. It's a different group every 20 minutes based on who wants to take a smoke break right now. The only thing they have in common is work, so guess what they're mostly talking about? And I would bet when there were still a lot of smokers, if you had done a survey, you would find that the smokers were more knowledgeable about what was going on in the organization than the non-smokers because they spent more time talking to other people from outside their own department. Right? What we need to do is to be able to create those kinds of connections using the same kind of tools that characterize Facebook and LinkedIn inside the organization, so that people can start not only creating those connections, but finding other people through them. Because you know what tribal knowledge is like right now. You need to find somebody, you pick up the phone and say, hey, do you know somebody who, with the social tools inside the organization, you could search the profiles, find the person, establish a connection, and now there's a new node on your social graph. But you also have the ability to create the connections between the people inside the organization and outside the organization. Who are our biggest fans? Who are our biggest brand advocates? Who are we communicating with? Who's sending us the most suggestions and ideas for improving our products the most? And to start to map those connections as well can produce tremendous amounts of value in terms of identifying where you can really, in a very authentic and transparent and positive way, to leverage those connections.
But I haven't seen so many companies that doing their job to visualize their social graph.
Well, thank God, because that's why I get work.
Yeah, they come.
If they were all doing this, I'd have to find something else to do.
Just for an example, in my company, you know, if you would like to have a release party or something, you ask your employees to, you know, grab your you know 10, 20, 30 closest friends, and everybody coming with their friends, or not friends, but their connections within the company, and there's tons of people, new people, and coming into this release party, and you learn to know different kind of new people, and then friends, if you can, you know, practice or how to say, use all these networks, that would be a great opportunity for the company.
Right, and it's a matter of starting to document it. And you know, there are a lot of people that I talk to that say social media. What did I just hear somebody said? I mean, the notion is that it has to be organic. It can't be organized, and I think that's ridiculous. I think there's a level of social media that's organic, which is just people having their relationships and their conversations. But
is this, when we're talking about audience, you know, Brian Saul's talking about audience, you're talking about audience, what do we really mean with audience? Is that the sum of the stakeholders, customers, prospects? What is it? Really?
I'm not sure I understand. What?
The audience, the term audience.
Oh, organic.
No, the audience.
Origins?
Origins.
Spell it.
Oh, A-U-I-D-E-N-C-E.
Audience, I'm sorry.
What did I say? Audience. Audience.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. We're talking about the audience.
Audience, yeah.
Audience? Never mind.
I apologize.
No problem. I'm Swedish, so it's perfectly fine. But what do we really mean with the audience?
That's right. Your English is way better than my Swedish.
No. Yeah, okay, maybe. but what are we really talking about? Are we talking about the customers, the prospects, the stakeholders, the
Well, it depends. I mean, what message are you trying to deliver? What story are you trying to tell? Yeah. What type of behavior are you trying to get from this group of people? I mean, an audience is a very fluid and shifting thing, and at any moment, a member or group of the audience can suddenly become content producers. Yeah. Jay Rosen is very famous for having said that we are the people formerly known as the audience. Yes. And even he knows there are still audiences. You're an audience when you go to a sporting event, or when you go to a movie, or go to the theater or a concert. But you could, if you're at a sporting event, you could be tweeting and suddenly be a content producer as well. So when I talk about an audience, generally I'm saying that group of people that you're trying to reach about some very tangible and specific behavior that you are trying to get them to adopt, or understanding that you want them to have, or opinion that you want them to reinforce. But it's a group of people whose behavior, opinion, is going to have an impact on some dimension of your business. So I'll give you an example. I did a social media consulting engagement with Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah. And what they were doing was introducing Britannica to social media. You could now link to a Britannica article in a blog post or a website, and people would be able to click it and see that without having a Britannica account. And they said, you have to go out and get bloggers to do this. And their first thinking was, we want all the A-listers, the really big famous bloggers. We would like Jeff Jarvis, and we would like Robert Scoble. And I said, not a chance. First of all, they're all just going to tell you that Wikipedia is the new model for encyclopedias. And second of all, they just get overwhelmed with these requests. And so what you need to go to a second tier group of people. And we did some research, and we came back and we said, okay, look, teachers, librarians, and journalists are all people who, as a profession, are generally told you're not allowed to use Wikipedia as a citation because we can't be sure of the accuracy of what we find there. Okay. So we went out and we found the very popular bloggers. These are not A-list bloggers in general, right? But within that niche, they were well known. They were well known as teachers, well known as journalists and librarians within their communities, and we made the offer to them, and it ended up being very effective. So it's a very small targeted audience, but we were trying to find the people who would want to go get one of these accounts that allowed them to link to Britannica articles.
So would you say this was like key influencers, not more or less? Or?
We weren't looking for them to influence so much as to start actually doing this, to actually start using Britannica as a source for the links in their articles.
Okay, like an ambassadors or something?
More or less.
More or less. So when you find these people, where do you do with these guys afterward? How do you, you know, keep them? How do you keep in touch with these people? What kind of a system do you use?
Well, with this particular group, it was really just a one-time thing, just in this one engagement. But in general, when you establish that relationship, you're in touch with them fairly routinely to let them know. One very simple way to put it is treat them like the press. Yeah. You're going to give them early notice to the things that you're doing, right? You're going to give them the special offers. You're going to give them the demo version of the product. You treat them like the special people that they are.
Because their authority is based on an information advantage in some way.
Right. And then among the super fans, the people who just love your company, they love your product. These are the ones who are in your support forums answering questions for you so that your support people don't have to. There are intrinsic rewards that you can help them get. I mean, create a leaderboard of who's answered the most questions, because there's a certain amount of ego gratification to knowing that you've beat somebody and answered more questions. Give them the little badge that says they're now a level 3 VIP on your support forums. I mean, there's these are the factors of gamification which apply the dynamics of games to non-game situations. And, you know, why do people play games? It's not because of some, you know, extrinsic reward. It's not because somebody's going to give them $20 or a trophy for winning. It's because of these internal gratifications that they get out of it. They feel like they've passed a milestone, or they've mastered a particular challenge or puzzle or task. It's because they've been able to figure this out on their own or with their small team. This is what makes people feel good and what motivates them. And if you can start to apply that to the people who are already your fans, then they become your ambassadors, and they start doing your support for you, and they start selling for you. And, you know, some people, they're not going to be the same people in 2 years that they are today. People are going to get bored with it, or they're going to move on. So you have to continue to cultivate the new ones who come in.
But when I'm talking with like marketing managers or PR managers or whatever, and I ask them, who's your 100, 200 most important people for your business? They can't really answer. In the old school days, they could say with the most important journalists were, but when it comes to the new environment, they can't say that really. Is that do you?
I think that's probably true. I think most of them couldn't say that. They should be able to. They should be able to tell you. And it's like I say, it could be a different answer today than it would be in 6 months. But if you go to the people who are behind all of the marketing at Sephora, which is a retail chain for cosmetics, they should very quickly be able to tell you who the most influential and important people are to them, because they have high scores on the Sephora Beauty Talk board.
Yeah. But if you take the Facebook page for an example, and you have thousands of likes, and I asking them, okay, wow, this is great, likes, but who of these really matters? Do you know
the ones who are engaging with you the most? I mean, you have all these likes, which mean absolutely nothing. The ones who matter are the ones when somebody poses a question, they're jumping in and answering it before you are, and they're sharing the pictures of your product, and they're sharing the videos, and those are the most important people.
Yeah, I think we should run sooner or later. When it comes to destinations or places where you meet your audience, how important would you say your homepage is? Still, is it important?
It's important. It's not as important as it used to be, because it's not the place most people are going to start. 15 years ago, the World Wide Web was nothing but websites, destination websites. That's all it was. Social media has allowed people to transition to something that is more interesting, more relevant, more interactive. It allows them to engage with people who are more like themselves, and according to the Edelman Trust Barometer, we trust people like ourselves more than we trust paid representatives of organizations. So the attention has shifted. But still, when somebody recommends your organization, I'm going to go look at your website. So you have to start to think now, what is the role of my website? It drives me crazy when I work with people who say we're still trying to drive traffic to our website. Unless it's an e-commerce site where people are actually going to make a purchase and have a transaction, I think they're out of their mind. What they want to do is drive traffic to where the attention is on their stuff, their discussions, and that's not necessarily their website anymore.
Do you think it has to do with they can't, tailor-made tailor-make their presence on these social networks. They are most all the same, more or less. You know,
Yeah,
only different kind of tabs, but if you look at the Starbucks,
you're forced into the same format that everybody else is in. But the thing is, the graphic appeal is not one of the things that drives people there. It's the conversation, it's the interaction, it's the engagement. I'm going to be much happier going to a site where I pose a question and somebody answers it, if it's really important and I need the answer to this, than going to a site that's really well designed and has some cool widgets on it, where I can't get an answer to my question. I'll go to the website if I'm an investor and I want to look at your investment history and information on your common shares. I'll go if I'm a reporter because I want to check your media site and make sure I'm spelling your CEO's name correctly. There are a lot of reasons I'm going to go to your website, but to engage with your organization is not one of them. That happens someplace else. And if you're talking about building relationships does not happen on a static destination website. It happens out in the social space.
Will it ever happen that Facebook could host the page on your homepage, if you see what I mean? You know,
well, they've already started doing some of that integration. So, for example, comments. You can now use the Facebook comments over on your website or your blog. But no, I don't think they're suddenly going to become the new WordPress or content management system. It doesn't fit at all with.
Keep it into this.
They're all about engagement and interaction and sharing. Way big about sharing, and it's the one thing that just doesn't happen on our website. So no, I don't think they have any interest in that.
Thank you very much, Shel.
My pleasure.
We are on our way to TweetUp.
That's right, across the street.
Thank you very much. And the next book with no title, right?
Right, about a year, I would guess. I'm still working on the proposal.
Thank you very much.